Hey there, Blue Mages, Liam here, and welcome back to Blue Academy. Today we're going to be wrapping up the recommended spells and how to play each role mini-series by talking about tanks. So, we'll just start off by talking about our spells here. Basically, tank has the most inflexible bar of all of the roles, but that's fine because you still get a lot of fun stuff on it. Naturally, we're going to have Mimicry and Angel Whisper. We're going to take all of our primals that we're able to. You might notice that we are not using Glass Dance. Glass Dance is actually, compared to all the other ones, our weakest spell. It's a 90-second cooldown, 350 potency, and it is desynced from the rest of our cooldowns because it's on a 90-second timer, so it's kind of weird. You know, if we do have room for it, we can always pick it up. But if we don't, then that's going to be sort of our first option to drop. Anyway, then we have our actual tank spells. So we're going to have Mighty Guard, which is required for threat and taking less damage. Dragon Force, which is a new spell that we got, which is 40% damage reduction for 15 seconds. It's quite strong, but it does have a cast time. We have the old reliable Diamondback. We're going to grab Devour. This is what gives us extra health, and as tanks, it will be able to have 100% uptime. So you can see here, Devour just gives me a nice big health buff. You'll want to have that up all the time if possible as a tank. And our last spell, sort of tank specific spell, is going to be Chelonian Gate. This is 20% damage reduction, and if you take 30% of your maximum HP, then you get to counterattack with a 1000 potency damage attack. Very, very powerful. So Chelonian Gate is very, very strong. It's amazing to use on big tank busters, but it does have some anti-synergy. So here I'm in 812S. This is unsynced. I'm level 70, but the reason I chose it is because if I pull him, he opens up with a tank buster pretty much right out of the gate, and this is enough to activate Trance, and then he will use the bigger tank buster, which will just kill me. Now, the issue with Gate is that if you are shielded or you reduce the damage, then it won't activate. So you really can only use it for your really, really big tank busters. So here, I've got a Healer Mimic. I'm going to put up Basic Instinct. I'm going to put up a Gobskin. I'm going to refresh my Gobskin because he's probably going to auto me. And then you can see it didn't activate. We don't have our actual thing there. However, when Punishing Heat does, obviously that will kill you synced anyway, unless you're Diamondbacked. So that's pretty much it. With Chelonian Gate, you just want to make sure that you're using on a big tank buster, because if you're just trying to get it through autos, if you have Vigilant healers using Gobskin frequently, then you might never actually get it activated. That's about it. Still a very, very powerful spell, and would definitely recommend taking it. As far as damage reduction goes, we also do have Bad Breath. On some fights, it can be helpful to try to maintain 100% uptime on this. Sometimes it's not feasible. But also for certain mechanics like Ion Efflux in 012, you will want to have this up. So it's worth taking that. So that's our sort of like core tank spells. Now let's look at some of the other things. We have Off Guard or Peculiar Light. Probably makes more sense for our tank to take Peculiar Light since they'll be in melee range pretty much all the time. Every blue mage should be taking one of those spells. Cold Fog is really strong. As a tank, you can activate this pretty freely. It doesn't... I mean, you're always going to be taking damage, right? Unless there's a long cast happening. So here, you just put it up, and then we've got 15 seconds of, Cold Fog, or White Death, rather. Very, very strong. As a tank, you can do that pretty much any time where you're not anticipating having to Diamondback or something like that for quite a while. Song of Torment is always good. You might notice we don't have Bristle. Bristle's only value for a tank is to buff Song of Torment, really, so it doesn't really get as much value. That being said, if you have the spot, you can take it. For example, if you're not going to be taking a Sting. Sting would be one of the first things we'd actually consider dropping here. All right, let's take a look at our other stuff. We've got Sonic Boom. This is just our weaving spell. You can take Sharpened Knife if you want, and you know that's totally fine. But you might be doing some kiting or movement, and for that, Sonic Boom will be better. We talked about Bad Breath already. We have Blood Drain on here. You know, it's still the case that in a lot of fights, Blue Mage tanks will be using Diamondback a lot, which is 3000 MP. So grabbing Blood Drain is pretty helpful still. I would recommend this in just about every fight, at least for the Savages. If you're still needing some more mana beyond that, Magic Hammer is a nice little tool for that too. It's also good for the mitigation for things like Giga Flare on T13. White Wind is kind of a confusing spell for a lot of people, but this is actually our strongest spell in terms of threat. If we use a White Wind, it's going to heal for my current HP. If we were synced to this, this would be healing me for about 6k, but then it also heals everyone around me for about 6k. So that is, 48,000 healing threat multiplied by Mighty Guard, which is huge. So for most fights, actually, let's say there's a 5-second countdown. Everyone's going to be grouped up here. When it gets to about a second and a half left, I will actually just cast a White Wind. That way, someone's Tingle or something will aggro the boss right at 0. My White Wind comes immediately after, and then I have a ton of threat. The other option is... Oh, right, I didn't aggro him. The other option is... can do a Sonic Boom, and then a Swift Cast White Winds. I prefer the first strategy, just because if people J-kick in, then you might not hit everyone. But White Wind is our best threat spell, so especially for something like T13, where you're going to be Diamondbacking shortly afterwards, or at least I like to. White Wind is great for that snap threat. You'll pretty much never lose threat if you manage to get a good White Wind off. Sting is very optional. If you're taking Sting, I would grab... where the heck is it? I'll grab Whistle. Whistle's also good with Tingle and Triple Trident. Basically, it's very rare that you are actually going to be stinging as a tank, so this would also be a contender for something to drop early. But Tingle, Whistle, Triple Trident, this combo is still really strong, so we'll want to take this as a tank if we're able to. So this is sort of the basis for our tank setup. Now things might change based on certain fights. If you're doing something where there's a lot of AoEing going on, where there's a lot of ads to pick up, Stotrim is really strong. That doesn't really happen in Savage rating, but this can be good for Neo X Death, for example, for killing the meteors and damaging Neo X Death, as well as A12, the ads phase. This could be helpful, but realistically you're going to be running around and tanking things, so it's not going to be as helpful. It'll only be helpful for the set of 4 ads. People might wonder about Cact Guard. This spell kind of sucks. You can't use it on yourself. If for some reason you're running 2 tank mimics, then maybe you might have an argument for it, but I wouldn't really recommend it. People might also notice that we are not taking Condensed Libra. Since spell slots are at such a premium, DPS aren't able to as freely take all 3 Libra fillers, so this doesn't have as much value. However, for some fights where you don't need all the utility spells, this can be a good option to take. It's a lot of free damage. Okay, so that's it pretty much. So how do we play our Blue Mage tank? Well, as a Blue Mage tank, your job is all about staying alive. So, here, for example, we have T13. Bahamut would open up with a Flare Breath. So this fight is like the worst for tanks, I think, out of all of them. You'll really cut your teeth on this one, but the sort of thing we would do here is we'd pull, do a Swift Cast White Winds, and then I like to do a Diamondback sort of immediately after. Our goal is to take as little damage as possible while holding threat and staying alive. So then he's going to do his Mega Flare stuff. For this, I actually would then Diamondback again. Here, that one would have been late, but I'd do that because he does a Flare Breath. And, obviously we do have other tools now, Dragon Force and stuff, but on T13 at least, there's so much damage going out that you know, I still recommend just Diamondbacking everything. On other fights, you know, A12 through the Divine Spears and stuff, Dragon Force is great. Chelonian Gate is amazing. You know, there's other things you can do other than just Diamondbacking. But our goal on most of these Savages is going to be learn the timings, Diamondback, make sure we have Blood Drain. There's not really a whole lot else to say about it. We're going to be doing damage when we can. T13, you almost will never have the chance to do damage, but on other fights you will. Okay, so you might be wondering to yourself, but what about dungeons? Liam, I have no interest in doing extreme trials or Savage content. That's totally fine. Dungeon tanking is honestly pretty fun too. To be quite honest, you play almost exactly the same as a DPS would. You just have Mighty Guard on instead. So it's really not that different from playing a DPS, but there are some small considerations to make. So I've changed my bar very slightly. For this, I dropped Blood Drain and I dropped Song of Torment because we're not really going to get as much value from those in a dungeon. But the two major spells that we do want to take are Ram's Voice and Ultra Vibration. And then Stotrum for, this is really good AoE for 4 or more targets if we don't have Healer Mimic and if we're not able to use Ultra Vibration on enemies. So basically all we are doing as a tank is we're going to rally up all the enemies and deep freeze them with Ram's Voice. And other people will be helping with Ram's Voice ideally as well. So the main thing is we're going to be running through here and we're going to be using our primals because they're instant cast to tag the enemies. So once we get up here, we will Ram's Voice and then Ultra Vibration. Now, since I'm here and it's synced, this is going to take me forever to kill if I have my Mighty Guard up, so I'm just going to turn off Mighty Guard. But pretty much every pull is going to be like that first pull, but some of them will be longer. Like you can see this one is much, much longer. And I'm going to die because I don't have my Ultra Vibration up, but you know, in a regular party, ideally someone else would have Ultra Vibration up. And if they don't, that's fine too. We can deal enough AoE damage as a group that it would be fine. So here, again, just going to tag with our Feather Rain. I'm going to Swift Cast White Wind. Normally we'd have a healer hanging out with me too. We'll jump behind, hit him with Supernica for threat. And we just precast our Ram's Voice. And you can see that catches all the enemies. And here we'd maybe just start spamming Stotrum for that fat AoE damage. But things are going to unfreeze here. And like I said, they'll kill me, but that's fine. If we had a group of 4, I would be healed through it. We would keep Ram's Voice up a little bit longer. That's pretty much it. And then as for boss fights, those will go the same as, you know, the Savage fights would go. We'll just DPS, we'll hold threat, and if a tank buster comes, we'll just use either Gate, Dragon Force, or Diamondback if we need to. But Diamondback is not really needed in dungeons. So that's really it. You know, Savage and Extremes require a little bit more focus. Oh, interesting. These things aggroed on me. They require a little bit more focus. Dungeons are pretty easy. It's just play and pretend you're a DPS, and then you know, aggro all the enemies, Ram's Voice, and Ultra Vibration, and that's pretty much it. So, interesting note to end on here. But thanks for watching. I hope that this will encourage more folks to play tank in party finder groups and so on. If you have any other questions, feel free to reach out, ask on Discord, do whatever you need to do. But good luck with your Blue Mage tank.